and the three speakers are discussing the personal experience as disabled parents, and they may also discuss other experiences of others they've worked and researched in relation to this topic. So the speakers are Sarah Fitzgerald, Catherine Carter and Carlos Rios. So I'm going to introduce Sarah first, and I'll introduce Catherine and Carlos just before they speak. So Sarah is a writer and a blogger. She's passionate about the realisation of human rights for disabled people. She's a member of the board of Independent Living Movement in Ireland. And lastly, and most importantly, she's a mummy to a wonderful 7-year-old girl called Alison. So thank you very much, Sarah. And we look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning, all. It's an honor to be here today, speaking at the 11th International Disability Commission, and to thank
We'll just check that microphone, Sarah, sorry, first. So do you want to hold one? I hold the wrong one?
No.
It's not really working. Right.
Yeah.
Here, I hold this if that's okay. Sorry now. So we're having a problem with the mic, so this might be easier.
Okay, Grant, thank you. It's such an honor to be here today, speaking at the 11th International Disability Commission. I thank Dr. Anderson and the organizers for their kind invitation. My name is Sarah Fitzgerald, and I am the mother of beautiful and intelligent 7-year-old daughter Alison. As you can see, I also have cerebral palsy, which in my case manifests itself to speech and mobility impairment. As a person, I have always been quite career focused. From an early age, I knew I wanted to be a writer, but as a child and teenager, I never gave any serious thought to being a mother. Looking back now, this seems strange, because I would consider myself to be a maternal person. Perhaps this was partly due to the fact that in the world of today's disability and of Martin Austin, people with disability have traditionally been seen as something to be cared for rather than cared upon. Disabled person is not often portrayed in the positive light by the media. Growing up, I was not exposed to any disabled mother. However, when I met my now husband, who also had cerebral palsy, he made it very clear that he wants to follow me. Like most disabled women, having a child was not a decision that was made lightly. There was much to consider in saying the impact pregnancy and childbirth would potentially have on my impairment and mobility. When I became pregnant, I immediately self-referred to a physiotherapist and occupational therapist to discuss with them how to retain my mobility during and after pregnancy and to develop techniques to manage tasks, dressing and making bottles for babies. This experience taught me that I would be expert in my own impairment. For example, I knew that the safest way to trump for babies and was being a boogie. I also knew that tough and elasticated pregnancy button was easier than baby boys with those pregnancy button. I hate that. I could see to listen to everything. Disabled mothers have appreciation focus. There's no room for them or for no for knowing what you are doing. You're not just parents, you are disabled parents. And not being asked to be anxious or nervous or afraid is the most painful aspect of this experience. I would openly admit that as a disability aspect, I have experienced what is known as intelligence person, especially currently after the best of my little girl. Intelligence persons have been described as a distribute yourself person. The way I would describe it is when you take all the negativity associated with your parents and you internalize it to a point where you are necessarily place limitations on yourself and believe that you are incapable. Halfway through my pregnancy, my ability to parent was questioned by the puppy handler and other professionals. I had answers, but not the answers. Something to do with the wrong answers. Nice of separation. I was very prepared for the applied today session, weighing ahead the 8.4. I was listening to when I specified that I wanted a session. I managed to convince the narcissist to give me a spinal rather than the general anesthetic that had been originally planned. I was perfect, absolutely beautiful. Soon after I started breastfeeding. This was something that had been insisted upon. I didn't really want to do it. But in the recovery room, he encouraged me that if I was breastfeeding then unless you do not be separated. After taking the baby 2012 and meant to go home, I had done my first testing. Physically, I was recovering well, but mentally, I was dying. Now, mentally, I testified that now we would have to prove ourselves. That morning, I day, which he wouldn't have done if he had known that I could not take one. He also said that evening on the recommendation of the nation for totally unsuitable clothing. It could be used to carry out around the head what I thought in the manual chair, which the HSC has provided for took away at home after Alice was born. In fact, we never used to sleep, and I believe we have it in back of a wardrobe somewhere. Basically, I adapted from the very quite well. I pushed Alice around in her buggy until she learned to come. I trained her on the bare single bed and made some cutline for her safety. I found a high-adjustable high chair and a small back and back support. Mentally, however, I was drained. I felt like an imposter waiting to be exposed. I was grateful, and even when I correctly guessed that it was a cosmic mortality, I still doubted my own ability to parent properly. By the time Alice was 6 months old, I knew I had both made and present, but who should it have? The so-called professional who discussed my ability to parent. Could I expose myself to scrutiny again? I didn't think so. And in fact, I only finally discussed it with my doctor last year after Mr. Mina. Alison is a happy, healthy 7-year-old. She is highly intelligent and sensitive and lovable. I feel so lucky to have her, and I would love this kind another potential parent with a disability for embracing parenthood. However, I would say it is as important as possible. It is important to be as prepared as possible and to know your allies are. Don't ever jump your way with doing things. Living with your parents means that you are the expert. Above all, and this is my biggest regret, enjoy parenthood and don't give a shit about others. At the end of the day, you as a parent, your child lives. Not because that effects of your own family, feelings, or shortcomings, but because only you will ever love them as deeply and completely as any parent can. And this love means that you will always try to do what is best for your child. And this, I feel, is the matter of any competent parent. Thank you.
Firstly, just thank you very much, Sarah, for that really powerful presentation. And I too hated those onesies, so I totally understand why you would avoid them at all costs. But thank you very much. And I think it's also just really important to show that the support was needed all parents need support, but that that many parents aren't questioned in the same way as parents with disabilities, and that's really important that we challenge that. I'd like to introduce Catherine Carter. So Catherine has been working for Change as a project worker and a lead trainer. She has a huge experience in training and speaking, having co-led the Change's Criminal Justice Project. She's worked closely with the prisons, the courts and probation services, but her specialist area of expertise is around women's health issues and parenting issues experienced by women parents with learning disabilities. So if we could welcome Catherine to the floor. Thank you, Catherine.
So hello, I'm Catherine Carter. I'm a mum with a learning disability and I'm on the autism spectrum. I have 2 children, 2 boys. They were both taken up me by social services in England. I referred myself to social services because I thought I might need help in looking after my first son when he was born. And they said they would have to do a parenting assessment on me. That didn't get done. So when he was born, my first child's called Michael, the social worker came to visit me in the hospital and he told me I had to stay in. I said I wanted to go home. But he said, well, we haven't done the parenting assessment on you, Catherine. Well, I said, whose fault's that? It's yours. Because I'm very stubborn, so I stand up for what I believe in. Because the doctor discharged me, so I thought I could go home. But he said no, the social worker, and he threatened to take Michael off my care and put him into foster care. So I went home without Michael, and I then fell into depression. And I had to stay with my brother for a bit. So I did get Michael back, luckily, but then I was so depressed I couldn't look after him emotionally. So my husband then started looking after Michael. I then found out I was pregnant again. This time it was another boy. But because I was already under the umbrella of Children's Social Services, they then took me to court to see if I could look after 2 children on my own, well, with my partner. It's very stressing going to court because you get put under you show the assessment. If you can look after your children, and they ask you all sorts of questions, like, you know, can you change a nappy and do buckles and stuff? Well, that's what they should ask you, but with me they didn't. I got assessed by a midwife at the hospital, which they did that in secret. They didn't tell me they were doing it. And when I got the report, because they did give you a report, social services, on it, at the time, the maternity ward where I was staying in the hospital was being done up. So I had to bath my second son in the kitchen sink, because that's all they had me to do bathing in. And in the report, when I got it, it had, so my second son is called Damien, and it had Damien's toe got stuck up the code tap. And I challenged social services with this, and I said, well, I'm not going to do that in my own home, am I? Going to bath him in my kitchen sink. Then they said, well, how do I know that, Catherine? And I had to challenge them to say, I want that took out of the report, because that's a fault against me. And they said, no, it's going to court, Catherine. We can't take that out of that report, because that's what actually happened. And the judge needs to see that. So I challenged them again and again to take it out, because I thought it was against me, because it wasn't right. And still they wouldn't take it out. They did eventually. They changed the words around a bit, the text, to explain why Damien's toe got stuck up the tap. But physically and mentally, when you go to court, it's really because in England, you have people with learning disabilities have a right to have an advocate. This doesn't really happen because, as you know, in England we have a Conservative government, and they are cutting advocacy groups across England. So people with a learning disability, depending where you live, you might get an advocate, or you might get a crisis advocate, or you might not get one at all. I didn't get any. I only got a crisis advocate when I needed her. And so I was in meetings where I didn't have her at all. And I had to speak up for myself. And that was very challenging when you have 8 people around the room fighting against you while you should have your children removed from your care. And you're fighting against these professionals saying why you are wrong to be a mother. I had, my husband was physically abusing me, so they removed the children from my care temporarily, and I had to then go back to court to fight for them to see if I could look after them myself. Altogether, my children have had 8 social workers in their life before they were removed from my care. And my oldest, when he was removed, he was 8 years old. My youngest was 6. And the social worker who said that they should be removed asked me what help I should need. She shouldn't be doing that. She should have done a parenting assessment on me. I know that now, but at the time, I didn't know my rights or where I stood physically. So when she asked me what help did I need, I didn't know. I hadn't been on my own looking after 2 children before. So I just said, oh, I might need help changing a light bulb. Because I was just put on the spot. She had rephrased that question to me and said, well, what things do you do daily? Take me through your daily routine with the children, and we can work out what support you might need to look after your children. But no, she didn't put it that way. Because I'm on the autism spectrum, you need to put questions to me, so the way that I would understand more clearly. And children's social workers need to understand that part of disabilities more, but they don't. So they put them in questions where you don't understand. In England, you may have it in Ireland as well, NHS England have now, where anything that comes under NHS, health or social care, parents with learning disabilities have the right to easy read information. But when I had my children, that wasn't out, because I had my children in 1999 and 2002. So yes, my oldest one will be 20 this year, and my youngest one will be 17. But when your children are removed, there is no support whatsoever. So when there's no support group, support parents with learning disabilities, you're just left out there. And I fight for parents with learning disabilities to have this support. When I'm giving training to social workers in England, I tell them support parents with learning disabilities. Make sure you put the support in place before the children are removed, because it's like your children have died. Because when my children were removed, my youngest one got adopted. So when your child's adopted, of course, you don't see them legally. But my oldest one got put into foster care, but it was 8 months before I saw him. And the gap between that, and I don't know him anymore. He doesn't even speak to me. And he's now 20 this year in October. I don't even have a conversation with him. And when I do, it's not very nice, because of what he's been through and what I've been through. And with my youngest son, I get letters from the adopted mum and photographs, and I get them twice a year of what he's up to. Damien has a disability himself. He's also on the autism spectrum. And I can't see Damien until he's 21 years old. The court said he can get in touch with me when he's 21. But he may not want to know me when he's 21. I don't know what that adopted mum's saying about me. I send letters back, they're nice letters. I tell him what I'm doing around changing people's opinions around parents with learning disabilities. I tell him my ventures of where I'm going, to the different countries I'm visiting. He knows I'm in Ireland. I tell him all this information, but I don't know if those letters are being passed on. I don't know if they're being read. And I hope they, that my oldest son doesn't even speak to his, oh sorry, that's my watch, to his youngest brother. And that makes me very sad. And I do ask him why, and he says that he doesn't understand him because of him being on the autism spectrum as well. And I just hope that children's social workers, see what damage they do to families, to parents with learning disabilities when they remove their children. In England, the worst place to have a child if you are a parent is Newcastle. Your automatic children are removed. The best places are Cornwall, London, Bath or Bristol, because there's more support there for parents with learning disabilities. In the future, I hope that, the English government change their opinion towards parents with learning disabilities, and that social workers also change their opinion, and more people like me go into universities and colleges and train up the future social workers to be. And they're paid to do that like I am. So their opinions are changed in the future, that more mums keep their children, and it doesn't happen like what happened to me. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you, Catherine, for that very upsetting story, and I suppose the upset to all members of your family as a result of the lack of support, and it highlights the importance of support to all parents and all new families, but particularly to families where mothers have disabilities, and that's hugely important. So thank you very much for sharing that story with us today. I'm going to move on to the third speaker here, who's Carlos Rios. Carlos is a top expert in international disability rights, and he served on the CRPD committee from 2011 to 2014, including in the role as vice chair of the committee. In that role, he was involved in the committee's jurisprudence on legal capacity, torture, right to liberty and access to justice. He is a lawyer and an expert in criminal justice and has been involved in criminal procedure reform in Mexico since 2004. Since 2015, he has worked with the Human Rights Clinic of Mexico's National University to litigate human rights abuses against people with disabilities. He has also served as a board member of Mexico City Human Rights Commission, and we're very glad to have you here with us today, Carlos.
Thank you very much to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity. I would like to thank...
Oh, it's not on, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Well, thank you all. I would like to thank Eleanor Flynn, Professor Eleanor Flynn, and all the organizers for the opportunity to address you this morning. And they've asked me to talk about my personal experience and maybe also the experience I've gathered from my research and my advocacy in the world. Right now I'm working for Human Rights Watch as a disability researcher and advocate. And I've been dealing with issues concerning family life, and I would like to give my own personal experience on this and maybe refer to the cases I've seen during my research projects in America, basically, in the US, in Brazil, and in Mexico, and the common trend and the common pattern that I can found in those countries concerning family life for people with disabilities. And well, first of all, I'm a father of 3. Both these kids are not my biological children, but well, I met my wife when I was 28 years old, and well, I managed to build a very good relationship with my kids now, and to, well, call them my kids. But this has to do, I think, as a way, family needs to be, the right to family for people with disabilities has to be approached, in my view, correlated with the issue of control with one's own life and the possibility of making your own choices, no? Because more often than not, family, in the case of people with disabilities, is something that you're stuck in, no? The family is stuck with you, or you are stuck with your family, no? And this is, I think, is a philosophy that needs to be changed, no? Of course, the issue about control relates to the possibility of deciding for yourself which kind of family you want to have, no? When I was a young person, at 28, I was convinced that I would never marry and that I would never have children, no? So that changed radically when I met my wife. No, but the message society gives you when you're a child with a disability is exactly that, a message of disempowerment, a message of disenfranchisement, no? And that is a very entrenched culture in our societies. In Latin American societies, this is pretty common, no? And well, you can find it also when you make research on disability issues, no? Because families, of course, are a place of support, but they can also be a place of oppression, you know? And right now I am making a research project in my own country, in Mexico, to research the situation of domestic violence, no? People who are in this kind of situations. And I'm not sure if in all the world, but at least in my region of the world, there is sort of like a mystical aura surrounding families, no? Sort of the places in which, no, people with disabilities can blossom. So you need the support of your family. But of course, if you don't have personal choices, if everything is left to the families, then that will place you at a higher risk to suffer violence, no? So I've been encountering much more and more cases in which people with disabilities are just stuck there with their own families without the ability to emancipate from violent situations, no? So this is quite common. And in Mexico, at least, all the policy and institutional framework, the legislation surrounding people with disabilities puts an onus on families that is quite hard for them to comply with, no? Because there is no support from families to raise their kids, so everything is left to them. So this, of course, creates the possibility of creating burnout for families, no? So, and in a way, if you're stuck with a person and you have to be a carer for it for the rest of your life, then you will develop these situations, no? I found cases in which this young person who was, well, was young at first, and then she was 49 years old, and the only thing she does is go to a special school, no, during the day, and she has been going to that special school since she was 8, and of course her parents have no expectations whatsoever on her, no, so she's not able to develop an independent life for herself, no, and she has to live in that situation forever, no. So I found cases like this several cases like this. No, in Mexico, if you don't take care of your family member with a disability, well, first you can be criminally prosecuted. So if you have the means to support a person with a disability and you're his family or her family and you don't support, then you could be criminally prosecuted. Of course, this is a wrong way to go. This is a way of building dependency on people with disabilities and not striving for their own independence and their own right to live independently and be included in the community. No? So this mystical aura creates situations like this. No? And of course, the message you send to people with disabilities of not having the possibility of having a family, well, that's also a very terrible issue to be considered. No. In the case of the United States, I also encountered horrible cases of people that cannot be given the right to parenting, no, because of different situations, no. I recommend the case, I'm considering it now, as the case of this young person who is Jason da Silva. You can search for his story in the New York Times. There was an op-ed that was done there, and he has a film, no, that he released just last week. That's called When We Walk. That basically narrates his struggles of being a parent with a disability. Specifically, he now lives in New York, and in New York, and as you know, in the United States, they have this Medicaid program in which you can, if you have a disability, you can get support or different kinds of support, but that depends on the state you live at, no? Because states have the possibility to determine what kind of support you get, no? And it varies from state to state. So states like New York City, for example, are very good at providing support for people who have high support requirements, no? Like Jason, he has multiple sclerosis, and he's a father of a young kid of 8 years old, no? And he can, of course, in New York City, get all the support he needs, no? 24/7. So he has 4 aides, no, that support him through different shifts during the day, no? But, well, he was married, but her wife decided to divorce him, and she moved with their kid, no, to Texas, no? And of course, he wanted to be close to his kid, and he decided to move to Texas, no? But Medicaid in Texas does not provide the support he will require to live in the community, no? So instead of getting support in his own house, he would have to be admitted into a nursing home, no? So in this film, which is very good, I really recommend it to you. He demonstrates, no, the differences between the support that you get in New York City, in the New York State, and Texas. Now in Texas, you need to be in a nursing home, and of course, there are very good nursing homes. No, it's a nursing homes that it's super, very professional. A lot of supporters. No, but of course, living in a nursing home, in an institution, no, entails, well, giving up on your personal freedom. No, you have to, of course, have a fixed schedule. No, you cannot decide when to get up, when to have meals, when to go to the restaurant, or your professional life. So what he did is he had to return to New York City, and well, he entered a claim in the family court there for his wife to or come back to New York, no? And what they've decided is that, well, his son will spend sometimes, at least some weekends, with him in New York City when he can get the kind of support that he needs, no? But of course that is gives way to inequalities, no? He's not able to raise his son or be near his son if he decides so, because he has no control, he has no possibility to get the support he needs in Texas, no? So that is an issue in the US. And of course, in other countries in Latin America, the situation is even worse, no? In the case of Brazil, for example, well, if you have a disability and you're poor, of course, it is expected that your family will take will care of you. But of course, this entails putting everything again on the onus of the family, no? So that is a wrong way to go, because of course families are not capable of providing all the support needed for a person with a disability. And this is wrong also because you as a person with a disability have an individual right to live in the community and decide what kind of family you want to have, no? And not be stuck with one family arrangement. And this, of course, happens in places like Brazil, in which you are, well, basically not supported by the state to live independently, no? In the case of Mexico, as I said before, all the civil legislative framework, the orientation is what I've just mentioned, no? The idea that your family needs to support you. And even if you're a parent with a disability, for example, I found several cases of deaf people who have had children, no? But their parents, no, have the legal possibility of removing their children from them, entering a claim or an action saying that because of your impairment, you are incapable as a parent, and they allow you to visit your own child, but they can legally take it and remove it from you, no? So those are issues that are really concerning, no, about the possibility of having a family. In my personal case, well, because of me having a job and me having the possibility of accessing personal assistance, I can, of course, have the family I choose, and the family chooses to be with me, no? But I'm not stuck with them, no? Or they are not stuck with me also, no? So I think the issue of family life should be also discussed in terms of the possibility of having control over your own life, no? It is not an accident that the CRPD, one of the basic principles of the CRPD is precisely the right to choose, to have your own independence, to have your own autonomy, no? And for family relationships, I think it is crucial to consider this as something essential and part of what needs to be, or the way that policy needs to be done in all countries, no? So with this, I close my presentation here, and I want to thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you.